Okay, so I think we'll get started. So hello again, my name is Marcy Marr, and many of you know me as the Kootenay Connect Manager for Kootenay Conservation Program. However, I'm here today with my CMI Board Director hat on. CMI, or the Columbia Mountains Institute of Applied Ecology, welcomes you today. And I'm joined by Kendall Benish, my colleague from Kootenay Conservation Program, or KCP. And CMI and KCP have joined forces again. This year, we present the 10th season of CMI's CRED Talks, which are the Columbia Region Ecological Discussions, and KCP's 12th Winter Webinar Series. We'd like to acknowledge that the region in which we work is the unceded homeland of the Sinixt, Secwepemc, Tanaka, and Syilx Okanagan peoples who've stewarded and cared for the land, water, and wildlife since time immemorial. Now I'd like to invite you to use the chat feature to introduce yourself and offer your own land acknowledgement to let us know whose territory you're zooming in from today. This season of webinars will explore the theme of lessons for the next chapter of restoration and stewardship. We're featuring 5 speakers who will discuss this theme from different perspectives, reflecting on key lessons from their careers in ecological restoration, land stewardship, and ecosystem monitoring, and emphasizing important insights that can and should inform future restoration efforts. This year's series is financially supported by Okanagan Nation Alliance, Tech, Ecoscape Environmental Consultants, LGL Limited, as well as KCP's program funders. And today we welcome Audrey Ehman, a professional agrologist and instructor at the School of Environment and Geomatics at Selkirk College. And Audrey will introduce us to the dry, non-forested brushland ecosystems of the lower Columbia River in the West Kootenays that offer a unique and important habitat for many rare and at-risk species. Her presentation will focus on classification, restoration, and best management practices that have been collaboratively developed for these unique ecosystems. And I'll introduce Audrey in a bit more detail in just a moment. As introductions and acknowledgements flow in, I'd like to tell you a little bit about CMI. CMI is a nonprofit society and an association of people working in the various fields of ecology. We provide professional development opportunities in the form of conferences, courses, and webinars that address everything from field and data science research techniques to complex land management conundrums. Our website's the best place to learn more about CMI and contains great resources such as proceeding documents and talk recordings from all of our major events. And now I'd like to pass it over to Kendall Benish from KCP.
Thank you, Marcy. My name's Kendall Benish, and I'm joining you on behalf of Kootenay Conservation Program, or KCP. And we're a diverse network of close to 90 land and water conservation and stewardship groups, federal, provincial, and local governments, First Nations, land trusts, agricultural producers, and educational institutions who all contribute to conserving our region. The purpose of KCP's partnership is to cooperatively conserve the biological diversity and naturally functioning ecosystems of the region through land conservation and stewardship, and to generate the support and resources needed to advance this effort, including building technical knowledge and expertise through webinars like this. We're excited to be hosting this webinar series again with CMI and would like to give an additional thanks to our program sponsors, without whom we would not be able to support this type of work. Just a few housekeeping details from me, and then we'll get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to both CMI's webpage and Kootenay Conservation Program's webinar webpage within a week. There will be a Q&A during the webinar, and we'll have that at the very end. So please use your Q&A function, which is a little button on the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, to enter a question into the Q&A for Audrey, and Marcy will be hosting that at the end of the presentation. There's also a little thumbs up button besides each of the questions. So if you see a question that you'd like to see answered, you can press that and it'll help move it to the top of the queue. And I believe that's it from me. So back to you, Marcy.
Great, thanks. And now I would like to introduce today's speaker. So Audrey Ehman has worked in a variety of ecosystem projects throughout Southeast BC as both a technician and ecologist. She currently teaches about plants and ecosystems at Selkirk College, and we're very pleased to have Audrey joining us for webinar number 2 of this series as someone of the next generation who's accepted the passing of the torch from her mentors. So welcome, Audrey, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Marcy and Kendall. Sorry, I'm just taking a minute here. Oh, okay.
There we go. Excellent.
I have used Zoom before. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for attending. So my talk today is a little bit maybe different than the title that was posted on the website, but it's all about the classification and management of brushland ecosystems in Southeast BC. I'll definitely be speaking more to the ones that we have in the local area of the West Kootenays, so around Trail, Castlegar, and Nelson. And I put this talk together with Thomas Hill, who has worked on these projects quite a bit. So before I go into my talk, I just wanted to give a little bit of project context. Today's presentation, it really brings together what I would consider like a set of connected projects that reflect years of collaboration, field-based learning, and thoughtful stewardship in the West Kootenays by lots of dedicated, amazing folks. And this work kind of asks how we could better understand and care for all of the dry ecosystems at low elevation, but in particular the brushlands. So these ecosystems across Southeast BC and in the West Kootenay in particular are considered fire maintained. Our steep, warm aspect sites have a history of burning for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons being ungulate winter range. So there is a history of a variety of burning projects. I'm speaking about the last few decades, including some projects that were led by the Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program to burn sites, places like the Lower Arrow, the Pond Array, Marsden Face, Kitchener Face. And the complex ecosystems being burned on these sites support high levels of biodiversity and have been heavily impacted by a range of different pressures. So that includes invasive species, fire suppression where they're not being burned, land use changes, climate change, the list goes on. So what I'll be sharing is a bit about a project called the Natural Disturbance Type 4 Intact Ecosystem Project. And this project was ongoing while there was also ecosystem classification renewal work underway in the West Kootenay or in Southeast BC. The Intact Ecosystem Project was initiated really with a desire to take like a cautious approach to continued and newer burning projects in these ecosystems. And the goal really is to ensure that the burning that we do or treatments if burning's not appropriate, enhances ecosystem function. And the data collected and the years of work done here has really led to a deep understanding and recognition of many of our dry ecosystems, but especially the brushlands that I'll tell you about. Ultimately, that work supported the publication of the BEC Guide, the Ecosystem Classification Guide. It led to the Conservation Data Center listing these ecosystems as at risk, as red listed. And it led to this beautiful document that I believe has been shared with most people about best management practices. And that was written by Evan McKenzie and Thomas Hill in collaboration with the Okanagan Nation Alliance and Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program. So what I'm sharing today, as I said, it really reflects not just a single project, but a long-term collective commitment to understanding and managing ecosystems. So I'll be referring to both can I use these tools? Sorry. I'll be referring to both this field manual of the best management practices and a little bit about the BEC. The field manual is authored, as I said, by Evan McKenzie and Thomas Hill. And there's this amazing background document also that describes the ecosystems in depth. And the tools that I'm sharing at the end of the presentation come from the field manual. So I like to just say that great projects involve great people. When I was asked to do this webinar, of course, I was like nervous and thinking about all the people that contributed to it. And so I just asked for some help. I co-created the slides, the content with Thomas Hill, who is pictured there. He's one of my favorite people to work with in the field, and he knows his ecosystems like no one else. Yeah, so he's just an amazing person to work with. The folks I listed here also contributed photos, advice, content to the presentation. So thanks to all those people. I kind of laugh at this photo because if you've worked with Evan McKenzie, you will rarely see him sitting down in the field. So I don't know how I got this picture. But one of the themes of this webinar series was the idea of the passing of the torch from one generation of scientists to the next. So if you've worked in ecology in the West Kootenay or even like across BC, you may have worked with Evan. I think of him as the plant guy. I really try not to text him all my unknown plants and ask him for identification. His knowledge of ecosystems, plants, has shaped a huge amount of work in the West Kootenays and across the province. He's an author in the best management practice that I'm sharing today and a co-author on many of the BEC classifications. His work has influenced countless ecosystem projects locally and across BC. And much of what we rely on today is built on that foundation. And the other person I just wanted to mention for a minute as well is Marlene McMore, and she's one of the key wildlife people in this work. So while there's lots of people who've contributed, she's contributed quite a bit to what we know about wildlife and habitat that's underpinning the ecosystem descriptions. Her contributions over the year have also been foundational to how we understand and thoughtfully manage the ecosystems around us. So I just feel like together, there's lots of people I could mention, but Evan and Marlene, they really represent scientists that I look up to, that I've learned a lot from, and that influence my practice both as a perpetual field technician and my practice as an educator at the college. So, hi, if you're here. Okay, on to brushlands. I wanted to just start by saying that I'm really guessing most folks that are attending these webinars already love rare ecosystems, love all of the ecosystems, and they probably have a deep love for grasslands. And I'm hoping that when you leave this webinar, you're just going to add that, expand your heart and include your love of brushlands when you think about important ecosystems. So what are they? They typically occur on warm aspect sites at low elevation in the southern interior. So in the West Kootenay, that would include, if you know, the driest interior cedar hemlock forests and drier sites within those. They tend to occur on soils that are coarse textured. That could mean rocky and shallow, or that could mean like glacial, fluvial, or fluvial and sandy and coarse textured. They generally occur, as you can see from this image of Juanita. They generally occur in a mosaic of other dry ecosystems. So open forests, rock outcrops, maybe small grasslands. They're dominated by dry shrub species that are often present and associated with our driest forests. So things like the ceanothuses, saskatoon, chokecherries, snowberry, all those types of drier shrub species. They provide important habitat for ungulates, reptiles, a long list of birds that Marlene provided to me. And they're really important for structural diversity on the landscape when in an otherwise heavily forested environment. And not only are they dominated by these dry shrubs, but when you start to look at what's in the herbaceous layer and the moss layer, then you'll find this huge diversity of species there as well. Many of those herbaceous species that you would actually associate with grasslands, so bunch grasses and a wide variety of forbs that you would otherwise find in those kind of grassland type sites. So yeah, as I said, they often occur in a mosaic with other dry ecosystems. So that could include like rocky sites or little pocket grasslands or dry open forests. As I'm showing here, this one on the left is actually a pre-treatment of a site that was slashed and maybe burned. I'd have to ask a friend. Um, So low elevation dry ecosystems, including brushlands across Southeast BC, are important to many Indigenous peoples as they span numerous territories. The background document that you've been shared with in the best management practice includes this particularly meaningful section created with knowledge shared by a Silk Knowledge Keeper. And I would just greatly encourage everyone to take a look and read that. It speaks not only to the importance of specific plant species, but also to the importance of these spaces as gathering areas and ceremonial spaces, and to the relationships that people have with them over time. The full section, I'll just leave it to you to read it for yourself. It's much deeper and offers a rich context and meaning, so it's well worth giving a read. Okay, Beck. If you know me, you've probably heard me talk about Beck. Beck is I know most folks here probably know it, but I'm just going to give a little quick reminder of what it is. So it's the provincial system of ecosystem classification within BC. It takes into account climate, geology, geography, plant community to describe the ecosystems around us. And at the site level, users are assessing soil, site, vegetation, and combining those things to come up with a classification. The system's been around in BC since the 70s, and while I feel like most folks think about it as applying to the forested ecosystems, and that is true, and that is where, kind of where it started, but it actually includes all of the non-forested ecosystems as well. So I know these all look exactly the same, but I'm just showing you the 4 most recent publications in Southeast BC. 2 or 3 are in the works right now as well. But these land management handbooks have been developed in the last 10 years, and they're covering a good portion of Southeast BC. So what I want to kind of emphasize is that in recent BEC classifications, there's been a bigger focus on the non-forested classification. And so projects like the Intact Ecosystem project that I just mentioned help us better describe and understand the ecosystems in this non-forested chapter. But it also includes grasslands, rock outcrops, talus, flood ecosystems, high elevation ecosystems. And as I'm sure most folks know, like these are really important habitat features for a variety of reasons. And lots of work has gone into developing these, in some case classifying them for the first time. So you'll probably see them change in future publications that the next generation will do. So I just greatly encourage you to familiarize yourself with this chapter if you haven't used it before, if you've only looked at the forested site series. Okay, so just showing you that that occurs in chapter 6 of all the Beck field guides. The new ones, they're laid out in the same way. And so when we're talking about brushlands, we would be down here in the grassland group, actually. And so it's got these wonderful tools that you can use to classify. And I'm showing you LMH 70, which these are the 3 brushlands that I'm going to describe. So they're classified under the grassland group, and as I said before, they're shrub dominated, but different than what you might know as the shrub steppe ecosystems, which are dominated by those drier grassland associated shrubs like sagebrush, antelope brush, rabbit brush, but still have those understory species that are associated with our grasslands. So in the field guide area around the West Kootenay, there's 3 different plant associations of brushlands. So just showing you that, and that the tools are similar to how you would look up the different plants in the vegetation table. These ecosystems make up regionally important ungulate winter ranges. I mentioned they occur at low elevations on low elevation on warm aspects where the snowpack is generally low throughout the winter, but they also are dominated by important shrubs for mule deer, white-tailed deer, and then they have a component of blue bunch wheatgrass and fescues, which are important for elk and bighorn sheep. They are fire maintained ecosystems and in varying states of having been recently burned or not. So some of them, could use a burn again or a more frequent burns, and that's in part what the best management practices is talking about, how to do that in a good way. So this first beautiful photo, thanks Marlene, is of what we call the GB or the Brushland 05 sumac blue bunch wheatgrass. Nice and easy to identify. It's the least common of the brushlands that we have in the West Kootenay. It occurs a little bit more commonly in the Boundary and the South Okanagan. And even though these are all dry site ecosystems, like they just have slightly different soil conditions. This one I would say is still warm aspect, but really like rocky slopes. And it has other species beyond what it's named for, obviously, but compact selaginella, parsnip flowered buckwheat, arrowleaf, balsam root grasses. And generally, I haven't done a ton of field work in these ones because they are a bit less common here, but yeah, I have seen areas that are quite dominated by invasive cheatgrass. So the state of these is one thing that has been studied through the Intact Ecosystem Project. The GB06, the snowbrush poverty oatgrass, smells amazing if you're there at the right time. The smell of snowbrush is amazing. This one occurs on a slightly different site, so still those low elevation sites, but on these coarse textured glacial fluvial or fluvial terraces. It has other species such as Oregon grape, snowberry, Saskatoon, and dominated by poverty oatgrass. Many of them the few of them that I've looked at are in kind of a variable states with some invasive species for sure, or in some cases a lot of invasive species such as knapweed, non-native hawkweeds. This ecosystem is kind of interesting because we really just see it in the lower Columbia, south of Trail, and probably occurs a bit more in the states to the south of us, but it is quite uncommon. I liked this quote from the best management practices, so I included it, just about the importance of the high diversity of ground nesting bees, shared by Valerie Huff. And then this common nighthawk nest in the GB06 secret location. The GB03, this is the most widespread, still uncommon on their landscapes, but the most widespread of the brushlands that we have here. So dominated by mallow bark ocean spray and blue bunch wheatgrass. This photo makes it look like these sites are really easy to do field work in, but don't be fooled. They can be pretty shabby and difficult to move through. This is the most diverse of the 3 different brushlands in terms of plant species, it really has highly sensitive, rocky, shallow soils, different from grassland soils. Like from my experience, I often find grasslands to have like an aeolian capping or a finer texture to the upper levels of the soil horizon, but these can be quite rocky, really sensitive, but just highly diverse in terms of species richness. And this one has been mapped fairly well. So I'm just showing you my week's GIS skills here, but this is just a snapshot of some of the mapping just west of Creston, showing how it's repeating on these warm aspect sites and that it's also occurring in a complex with other dry ecosystems mixed in with them. And then as well, emphasizing that it's really in our lower elevation ecosystems. The plant species richness in the GBO3 is incredible. So I'm always learning new plants when I'm working in these ecosystems. And thankful that Evan has documented them so well that I can learn them easily-ish. But I liked this quote from the best management practices just about the wild number of native species occurring on these different sites. So 104, imagine your field card when you squeeze 104 plants on it, or and 109 at Fox Tree Hill, which is outside of Creston. And then just highlighting that um, in addition to being like greatly diverse, they also have a number of rare and listed species. So these photos I didn't take, but yeah, thanks to Lindy Lynn for supplying them in Thomas. And some of these plants occur in adjacent dry ecosystems as well. And as I mentioned, important habitat for a variety of species. So here's another few species, and the list is long. So I kind of always say that it's in our dry, low elevation ecosystems, there's a disproportionate amount of rare and listed species occurring there. And finally, really important for our pollinators, these beautiful photos by Jacob. So in part, all of this knowledge led to, and all of this information that we have, data that we have, led to a conversation with the Conservation Data Center and a ranking of these ecosystems. So just like talking about plants that are red and blue listed, then also some ecosystems are red and blue listed. And so both of these, after a process of mapping and assessing, describing, came out as red listed ecosystems. So these are listed there if you go to the Conservation Data Center website. So in terms of the threats to these areas, I think you'll find that these threats are very similar to what we consider most of our threats to grasslands are. So because these are non-forested environments, threats are quite aligned, but invasive species and soil disturbance, these can both be like long-term irreversible disturbances in some cases. They directly impact biodiversity and they're recognizing these and how often we see invasive plants and soil disturbance in these ecosystems is what's led to this best management practice. So guidance, so a desire to see that, but to do it better. Certainly development or land conversion, like direct habitat loss has occurred. So this is the trail airport, and these lower benches are the GBO6, the snowbrush ecosystem. And so in some cases, they have been converted for development. So yeah, you can see the airstrip, maybe the gravel pit, industrial site. And I mean, this is a reality of our lives, but just acknowledging that this is something that's, creating pressure on all of our valley bottom ecosystems. And then invasive species, as I mentioned, and linear features. So this road going right through our beautiful brushlands and this power line. And yeah, as I said, like these are a part of our world, but definitely they are threats to our ecosystems, and there are good ways to manage them well. This old air photo is of Fox Tree Hill. So this is a brushland outside and a complex of dry ecosystems outside of Creston. And yeah, Thomas provided this for us to show like forest encroachment. So not only are you seeing land conversion as well, but you're also seeing the ingrowth of tree species there because of the lack of fire. And this area was probably historically burned. So that kind of just leads to the current condition and leads me into a little bit about the Intact Ecosystem Project more specifically. So all of those threats and the fact that that these places are at low elevation have kind of left few of these sites as sort of intact and weed free, and so that is what the Natural Disturbance Type 4 or Intact Ecosystem Project was exploring. So yeah, this was all about this project is where we get the ability to describe these ecosystems well, because they did these paired plots of areas that were impacted and areas that were like potentially further away from a road, and compared them to investigate the differences in diversity in the herbaceous layer and investigate the impacts of invasive species. So it was just kind of looking at what we could call over-rested ecosystems, places that are fire dependent and hadn't burned for a while, and thinking about what it will look like if we burn them in their current state. So trying to measure the success of burning happening, taking that cautious approach that I mentioned at the start. And I really simplified this, but the two key takeaways of the project, comparing those intact and more disturbed areas or impacted areas, was really that when there's abundant invasives, I mean, I don't think this is surprising, but when there's an abundant invasives, then species richness of our native species is lower. And also that blue bunch wheatgrass has a significant lower abundance in those disturbed areas. So just noticing, documenting statistically, showing that the changes in community structure due to weeds are happening. And then also this really brought home the fact, or brought home that there are a few of these intact, in good condition sites that are remaining. And it led to the recognition by the good folks working on this project, Thomas and Evan, that we really needed some guidance for people to do the right thing and manage these ecosystems better. So the best management practices document that I think was emailed out to everyone and has been posted in a few different places and being shared, was developed to provide like clear and concise management practices for conserving, protecting these ecosystems. And it's developed to guide activities of industry and stakeholders when conducting maintenance, restoration work, or even, if this is part of your wildland urban interface management. So just taking best care of these sites. The area covered by the manual is south and central parts of the West Kootenay, and includes some of the boundary and really focuses on low elevation. While I'm talking about brushlands mostly, it also describes grassland type and dry open forested ecosystems or site series. So this is the cover of the field manual, and I'm presenting just a few little things a few tools that come out of the field manual, but as I mentioned at the start, there is also a background document describing, kind of what I've just described in more depth about all of the ecosystems. And it was prepared for Okanagan Nation Alliance and Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program. So here's just the table of contents for it. And yeah, I just want to highlight that there's a lovely introduction and background, but it's really heavily focusing on conservation and protection, as well as site and ecosystem restoration. So it's got a lot of good information in it. And I'll just mention that like my portion of working on these ecosystems, this wasn't my part of it. I was working on more of the classification and some of the mapping. So questions that come up about this document, I'm hoping other folks can support me in the answers, or I can get back to you. Um, there's just a suite of great tools that are provided here in this document. And the first one that we wanted to highlight is just called Table A, but it is just this really neat and tight kind of steps to managing invasives and non-native plants on disturbed sites. And it just takes you nicely through how you could do, pre-treatment and follow up, and the steps that you could take if you're impacting or managing these areas. So I think if you just like read through it at the end, you'll find that it's quite well laid out and nice and simple. And then I love standardized data collection. So this documentation, this little field card that they made in the appendices, showing like really just laying out how you can document well any planting treatments or seeding treatments that you might do after invasive species treatment or removal. So just a really important tool for people um, to do good documentation, to do good monitoring of any sites that they're dealing with. Another thing that I think is really amazing that came out of this work is the development of a seed mix of grasses that are local to these ecosystems. So if you've ever had to do grass seeding for any projects, restoration projects, you might know that it can be difficult to get the right one, to get one that's appropriate for your area, and this interior native dryland seed mix is what has been developed because of this work. And beyond that, because it is so important to do seeding and treatments after we remove invasive species if we're rehabilitating an area. This is another tool that was developed, and oh, that didn't really work. This is a table showing the different ecosystems and the species of grasses and forbs that are and shrubs that are available. So the yellow highlighted is the nursery stock available. The X are commercially available, and the stars are not yet commercially available. But this is just great guidance so that you don't have to make it up yourself. It's like, here is a really good reference for what you could attempt to plant in different areas and what's available and what's not. And then my last, almost last slide is just about the restoration recommendations. So Thomas and I tried to just pin down a few really important pieces that come out of the guidance. And first, really just, yeah, I think it's known, but documenting invasive species and making an appropriate treatment plan for them is really important in these ecosystems. So sites that are full of invasive species, burning those is going to spread those invasive species potentially, or reintroduction of low intensity fire where appropriate. That is definitely something that I know folks are working on. Mechanical treatments to mimic fire. So there has been some work done like this in these ecosystems. I just couldn't source any photos of that project, but like mimicking fire where prescribed fire is not an option. And so that would include like slashing of palatable shrubs for shoot renewal, creating wildlife trees through inoculation, maybe removing conifer ingrowth, or not maybe for sure, increasing the crown base height of mature trees, and of course invasive species management. Uh, and then the other really important recommendation is just the pre and post treatment of including monitoring and controls. So, yeah, the contributors to this project, just wanted to acknowledge them. Fish and Wildlife, Compensation, Okanagan Nation Alliance, Tech Trail Operations, Ministry of Forests, and BC Conservation Data Center. And that is what I had to share. So thankful I can use all those plant photos on my phone for something.
Well, thanks, Audrey. Really appreciate your talk and yeah, amazing photos, and I'm glad you're part of such a great team of people. So we have about 15 minutes for questions, and let me look through our little Q&A here. So here's the first one for you. Where can the interior dryland seed mix be purchased? And is there general guidance available for the most effective seeding timing slash procedure?
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna have to, there might be someone in the chat who can share where it's been purchased. I actually did purchase it for a project at the Selkirk College, or recommended it, and someone else purchased it, so I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Anyone out there?
Wondering if Sagebrush Nursery.
Sagebrush Nurseries, yes, I do believe
Okay.
so. And Iralee is saying, oh, sorry, you're probably looking at the chat.
No, actually, I wasn't. I have used them as well. I was just thinking did someone in the chat put sagebrush up too?
Um,
Oh,
oh,
don't worry
someone's
about it.
just suggesting
Suggesting
sagebrush.
it? Okay.
Alicia, yeah.
Okay.
Interior seed was also an option that Iralee put forward.
Yeah. Well, Al, hopefully that was the question from Al Pete. Hopefully somebody can get back to you, Al, and let you know. Another question is that he had about that was the effective seeding and timing and procedure for seeding.
Yeah, perhaps that's in the management document that I did not work on extensively, or I didn't work on at all, actually. So I'm sorry,
Okay.
but I'm happy to, I want to find these things out as well. So I'm very happy to get back to folks about that.
Okay. I just saw somebody put NIPCU in the chat. Didn't see the whole chat, but anyway, they may be another source for that kind of a seed mix.
I was just
Um,
going to add too, sorry to interrupt that. Evan and a couple people noted that there's also places to purchase included in the field manual. So if folks
Thank
oh,
you.
in there's some
awesome.
Thanks,
suggestions.
Evan.
Okay. Boy, the manual's very comprehensive. Good job, you guys. Okay, next one, Audrey, is since fire regimes are so important to the brushlands, are there any
hmm
examples where cultural burns by the nations have been supported and reinstated as a stewardship practice?
Um, oh, none, so is there a chance that I know that there is a project in the works, but I can't think of an example of one that has happened. But I do know there's a project in the works, and the project that I work on, that's a little bit separate from this, would include some of is our driest ecosystems is collaborative with a couple of nations, yes. So that's a fish and wildlife compensation program that's collaborative out in the lower Arrow.
Okay, great. Here's another one relating to low intensity burns. So, are there cases where conducting a low intensity burn could reduce invasive plant coverage in a treatment area? Or is it commonly expected that burning areas where invasives are present is going to increase invasives coverage?
Yeah, my knowledge is that it's pretty expected that invasives will increase, and that's a part of why we want to document and understand the condition before we do treatments like this. But surely, there's other knowledge out there that might say differently, but yeah, that's definitely part of what drove the building of this document is just wanting that cautious approach to make sure that the invasives aren't being spread after a burn.
Okay, so this person's follow-up is so recommending that you conduct some sort of treatment of invasives before during doing a burn.
Yes, that's the guidance that's being given, yeah, in the
Okay,
document. Yeah.
awesome. Next one, Fortis just did a public consultation about the use of chemical controls on vegetation on their properties. And of course, there was a knee-jerk reaction against the use
Mm.
of chemicals. Are there viable alternatives to realistically control invasive species in those places? And somehow that person says, somehow I can't see armies of people moving along right-of-ways, hand pulling them all. So
Uh,
anything in the manual or that you know from your experience, Audrey, to provide some
oh,
advice?
yeah, I think CKIS is your, or whichever your invasive species council in your area would be best for providing advice, but surely the manual speaks to that in part about just choosing uh, the appropriate treatment for species renewal and seeding afterwards. Yeah.
So
These are tough questions.
I know people are thinking out
People are
there.
smart.
Yeah. So here's one related to your manual and the background document. What are the major changes that are in the updated version of the background document and field manual?
Oh, I'm getting so this I haven't worked as much on the background document, but I can follow up with what the major changes are to the fine what I think is the final version, version 7. Unless
Okay.
someone wants to, if anyone out there wants to comment on that, I'm sure that folks who did the authoring and editing would know the answer to that.
Yeah, Alicia just said updated data sheets,
Okay.
and the cultural piece, having that added
Oh,
and
that
maybe
was neat.
revised. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Alicia.
Yeah, and so how about the field manual? Those are things you're
No,
get
the
deep
back guide.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Beck Guide.
Oh, the
Anything more to
updates
say
to
about that?
Oh, yeah, I think the main thing I wanted to just say about the Beck guides is that there's a few that are still being worked on in Southeast BC, but also just that, yeah, these are the kinds of projects that help us describe the non-forested ecosystems better sometimes. And the non-forest chapters are just really important for people to actually open and use beyond that. That's been a big addition to Newbeck, has been expanded and developed non-forested ecosystem classification.
Okay, I think those documents are all available, right? The field manuals are out, and
Mhm.
Kendall, I saw put a link into the chat with the background document, correct? That was dated, I think, very recently this month, right? You guys just put the final touches on it, Audrey?
Oh yeah, just like last week. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And
I know.
so that's now available. I think there was a question around that. So those
Yeah.
are all available and online. And yeah. So another change that Alicia let us know about was that you've included some feedback from local experts into the background document. So it seems like it went out for a good review and update. So the current one is the current one, right? It's the latest and greatest. Great. Anything else from folks in terms of questions or anything, Audrey, that you um, want to let folks know? We have a couple more minutes. Sometimes you can't fit it all into a presentation, but maybe you have some observations you'd like to share.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, I think I just want to just mention that, yeah, there have already been some projects that have happened locally, um, in the Lower Columbia, in Fort Shepherd and at Beaver Creek Provincial Park, where these ecosystems occur. And yeah, I am sure we're going to see some more burning in the future and mechanical treatments. Yeah, so just appreciation for everyone who's doing amazing, thoughtful stewardship.
Yeah. So a question that wasn't asked, I'm just wondering with the emissions from tech, over so many decades, how do you factor that into to the assessment work that you guys do based on different aspects or maybe
Mm,
even distance from uh,
yes.
the main
So
tech stacks? Yeah.
yeah, so that is a project that I've worked on a little bit and along with Marlene and Evan, Mike Van Wyck, a couple other folks, we because that is a very like serial condition in the landscape there. There are lots of young forests, and so we actually went out and visited all the sites that looked like brushlands and assessed them. And so we're just really looking for like yeah, what types of shrubs are going there and soil conditions, whether or not they matched and just trying to figure out which ones were brushlands or we do consider brushlands and which ones are in a cereal state. And so yeah, that work has actually been done at some level. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
was really just we're considering which dry shrubs were out there, what the soils were like, and whether or not that matched with our concept of what the mostly GB03 is.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. I saw that Marlene raised her hand. I don't know if you meant to chime in on this, Marlene, but maybe Kendall, you can unmute her just in case.
You bet. The hand did go down immediately after. So
Oh, okay.
I
All
think
right.
it may have been a button slip.
Okay.
Oh, no. We're back. Okay, here we go. I'm going to unmute you, Marlene. Go ahead.
Thanks, Audrey, for that talk. That was great. I just wanted to chime in on one thing, which is, we're planning treatments, collecting pre and post-treatment information, but I think one of the most valuable things we can do is learn from oopses in terms of informing potential effects of treatments. So when I talk about oopses, I talk about things like when things are done that may not be consistent with the guidebook, but they were done and we can certainly learn from them. And I'd like to just give a couple of examples. One being BC Hydro was doing a lot of treatments in the GBO3 along power lines and using a mower. And it became very obvious that those mowing treatments were essentially preventing those ecosystems for being functional for certain species that depend on them, like yellow-breasted chats, for instance. They were basically out of commission for up to 15 years after a mowing treatment. And then there were other things that happened, oopses, where, there was an electrical shortage. There was some work done by Fortis. A short circuit occurred, a fire that I think was about 4.5 hectares around a chat territory occurred while that territory was active. And one could see very clearly that there were very direct impacts, but also long-term impacts for about 12 years, where that chat territory was very severely burnt and not occupied and had a lot of weeds develop in it as a result of the fire. So in addition to the treatments we plan, where we have pre and post treatment data, there is a lot to be learned from things that just happen. And if we happen to stumble across those and we have some familiarity with the ecosystem before, we can learn a lot from that and help it have that inform how we plan and execute treatments.
Great. Thanks, Marlene. Thanks for chiming in. It was really good. Okay, Audrey, final word to you.
Uh, yeah, well, I just really appreciate what Marlene shared there. So thank you, and thanks to everyone who attended, and thanks for the folks who are working on projects like these.
Yeah, okay, awesome. We'll call it good and let everybody out early for a minute or two. But before you guys go, I just want to say that I hope to see you next week because in 1 week, February 5th, we've got Randy Harris who'll be talking on restoring grasslands in the Rocky Mountain Trench. So we're going to swing from one corner of the Columbia Basin to the other and yeah, stay in this grasslands mindset for another week. So I hope to see you next week and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.